Everyone made fun of the old man's appearance, but when he took the microphone on a dark and stormy afternoon full of ominous omens, Arturo, a 45-year-old man on the cusp of his life, found himself immersed in the heart of an unthinkable tragedy while driving his car through streets that the rain had turned into rivers. The drops violently lashed the windshield, making visibility difficult, and suddenly, as if emerging from the void, an out-of-control vehicle appeared and crashed brutally against his. As if emerging from the void, an out-of-control vehicle appeared and crashed brutally into his car. The impact resounded with the force of thunder, and in that brief moment Arturo's existence was irreversibly transformed. He was left unconscious, his body imprisoned in the jumble of metal that had once been his car, a desolate picture of destruction and chaos around him. The atmosphere was filled with distant sirens and urgent voices. The rescue teams worked desperately to pull him from the wreckage of the vehicle. "Stay with us, sir," shouted a rescuer, trying to keep Arturo clinging to consciousness as he oscillated between wakefulness and a dark veil of unconsciousness. The days that followed were a whirlwind of pain and bewilderment for Arturo. Emergency hospitalized, he underwent multiple operations in a desperate attempt to repair the severe injuries he had sustained. Each day became a struggle to survive, each breath a painful reminder of his sudden vulnerability. The surgeon in a calm but firm voice assured him, "We will do what we can, Arturo." However, these words offered little comfort in the face of the harsh reality he had to face. When the surgeon with a calm but firm voice assured him, "We will do what we can, Arturo." However, these words offered little comfort in the face of the harsh reality he had to face, a painful reminder of his sudden vulnerability. The surgeon in a calm but firm voice assured him, "We will do what we can, Arturo." However, these words offered little comfort in the face of the harsh reality he must face. When he finally had the strength to look in the mirror, Arturo could not recognize the face that looked back at him. Instead, the scars, the subtle changes in his countenance, all contributed to the strange sensation of seeing himself as someone else. This visual shock only deepened his sense of alignment of his own body and life, a cruel reminder that nothing would ever go back to the way it was before. The scars furrowed his formerly unblemished face like meandering rivers, disfiguring the once smooth and even surface. With his voice cracking with fear and uncertainty, Arturo looked at the doctor and asked hopefully, "This is temporary truth?" The doctor, with a mixture of compassion and professionalism, responded gently, though without offering deceptive comfort, "I'm sorry, Arturo, some of those marks are permanent." The response of his wife was an even more devastating blow to Arturo. As she entered the hospital room, her face initially showed pity, but quickly her expression changed to one of disgust. "Sorry, Arturo, some of those marks are permanent." His wife's response was an even more devastating blow to Arturo. As she entered the hospital room, her face initially showed pity, but quickly her expression changed to one of palpable disgust. With tears welling up in her eyes, barely audible, she murmured, I can't look at you like this." Arturo, with his heart shattered, could only nod, swallowing the mixture of understanding and the departure of his wife not only closed the door on their relationship but also marked the beginning of a dark chapter of loneliness in Arturo's life. The physical pain of his scars was a perpetual reminder of the tragic accident, a constant presence that he could not ignore. However, even more painful was the emotional scar he now bore, the loss of the love of his life, a torment that haunted him day and night. The days in the hospital became an endless succession of moments of bitter reflection. Arturo was plunged into a torment that haunted him day and night. The days in the hospital became an endless succession of moments of bitter reflection that now bore the loss of the love of his life, a torment that haunted him day and night. The days in the hospital became an endless succession of moments of bitter reflection. Arturo found himself immersed in thoughts of what his life had been and what he feared it would never be again. Each day was a struggle not only against the physical pain but also against the devastating reality of his new life. Against the devastating reality of his new existence, the visits to Arturo's hospital room were becoming more and more infrequent, leaving him in a silence that was barely interrupted by the echoing voices of a past that seemed to be gone forever. During the periodic visits, the doctor would assure him that you are recovering well physically. However, Arturo was fully aware that he had been in the hospital for a long time, and that he had been in the hospital for a long time. However, Arturo was fully aware that the deepest scars were not those that could be treated with medicine. From the window of his room he watched the people in the street leading normal lives, oblivious to his suffering. He instead felt imprisoned inside a body that he no longer recognized as his own, a body that seemed to him more like a stranger than a human being, a body that seemed to him more like a prisoner of his own Again, how will I face the world now? That man who had once been characterized by his robust self-esteem and his security now lay in emotional ruins. He remembered the days when he felt strong and confident, capable of facing any challenge with courage. These memories, instead of bringing him comfort, only intensified the pain of his present. The discrepancy between who he had been and who he had become plunged him into a deep melancholy, exacerbating the sense of loss and despair that had accompanied him during his long absence from the hospital. When he finally received his medical release, Arturo returned to his home, a space that now seemed surprisingly empty and silent. Every corner, every piece of furniture in the house evoked memories of the life he had once enjoyed and that now seemed hopelessly lost in the silence of his home. As he looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, Arturo gently ran his fingers over the scars that had been left by the scars on his face and the scars on the back of his head. His fingers over the scars that furrowed his face, each line, each mark on his skin served as an impeccable reminder of the cruel destiny that life had imposed on him. The scars were more than just physical sequelae, they were the visible testimony of his new reality, a world marked by isolation, pain, and a deep nostalgia for the man I used to be. They loved me, they respected me, now I am only a shadow of what I was, murmured Arturo to his scarred reflection. His voice was a whisper full of resignation and despair, a confession to the man he now saw in front of him, so different from what he had been and so confined within the walls of his house. Arturo began the arduous process of adapting to an existence he had never imagined having to face. Each day became an exercise in survival and adaptation. Learning to live with the aftermath of his accident and accepting the new identity that circumstances had forced him to assume after the accident that left deep scars, both physical and emotional, Arturo opted to withdraw into a life of isolation. Learning to live with the aftermath of his accident and accepting the new identity that circumstances had forced him to assume after the accident that left deep scars, both physically and emotionally, Arturo chose to retreat to a life of isolation. His home that once rested with life and joy became a solitary refuge, a place where silence and loneliness echoed in every corner, marking each day with the shadow of the tragedy he had suffered in an attempt to protect himself from the outside world and the world outside him. Perhaps in some way to protect others from himself, Arturo kept the curtains closed, blocking out the sunlight that struggled to dispel the darkness that enveloped his broken spirit. This isolation was not limited to the physical environment. Arturo had also distanced himself emotionally from his family. Despite missing them every day, and especially his grandson Lucas, who was only 2 years old at the time of the incident. Arturo considered himself a monster because of his scars. Wrapping himself in his loneliness, Arturo lived for years as a prisoner in his own home, locked up not only by the physical walls but also by the barriers he had erected around his heart. Yet it was in that self-imposed retreat that Lucas, his grandson, became a ray of light, a promise of redemption and unconditional love. Years after the accident, the opportunity for a change arose when Arturo's daughter asked him to take care of Lucas while she was attending an appointment. The day Lucas visited his grandfather, Arturo's house seemed to awaken from its long slumber. Grandfather, Arturo shouted, Lucas running towards him with open arms, filling the space with his energy and youthful joy. Arturo, full of doubts and fears about how his grandson would react to his appearance, froze for a moment. However, Lucas, with the innocence and acceptance that only a child can have, embraced him without hesitation or judgment. Lucas's tender embrace was not only a moment of affection but also a powerful reminder that despite the physical scars, love and family ties offered a path to emotional recovery and acceptance of his transformed existence. However, life had another tough test in store for them. Several weeks later, a tragedy struck Lucas' already fragile life. His daughter and Lucas' mother passed away due to a serious and unexpected illness, with the death of his mother Lucas, who had no other family ties. Several weeks later, a tragedy struck Arturo's already fragile life. His daughter and Lucas' mother passed away due to a serious and unexpected illness, with the death of his mother Lucas, who had no other legal guardian, was taken to live with his grandfather. Arturo, in a moment of profound pain and change, Arturo found himself looking into the sad and determined eyes of his young grandson. With a soft but firm voice he explained the painful reality. Lucas, your mother has had to leave. Now it will be you and Lucas who will have to live with his grandfather. I assured him of his unwavering support. He added, I promise I will be by your side no matter what. Lucas, although overwhelmed by the loss, he looked at his grandfather and found an anchor in the storm of his emotions. With a trembling voice, but with a gleam of resilience in his eyes, he replied, I know that together with grandfather I will be fine. This tragic event marked the beginning of a new phase in the lives of Arturo and Lucas. United by the pain of their loss, each found comfort and strength in the presence of the other. Together they began to rebuild their lives, supporting each other every step of the way in the solidarity of shared suffering. Arturo and Lucas learned to navigate their new reality, finding in it a source of strength and renewed hope. Arturo and Lucas learned to navigate their new reality, finding in it a source of strength and renewed hope. Arturo and Lucas learned to navigate their new reality, finding in it a source of strength and renewed hope. Arturo, despite life's adversities and the visible and hidden marks they had left on him, he firmly assumed full responsibility for caring for Lucas. He was determined to provide him with the love, support and guidance his grandson desperately needed at that time of great vulnerability. Although it was a colossal task, Arturo was determined not to falter in his commitment. In the days that followed the once vibrant house and the house that was once a place of great vulnerability, Lucas at times seemed distant, absorbed in his thoughts and clearly missing his mother. Arturo did everything he could to fill that void, but one night while they contemplated the stars together, Lucas said, "Grandfather, sometimes I feel as if she were still here, you know, as if she was watching us from somewhere," to which Arturo, also looking at the sky, responded with tenderness, "She will always be with us, Lucas. In our hearts and in the memories we shared." Arturo and his daughter found consolation in the small things we shared. In our hearts and in the memories we shared. Over time the sharp pain of loss began to soften into sweet memories of who had been his mother and daughter. Arturo and Lucas found comfort in the little things, the dinners they cooked together, the stories they told each other and the life lessons they continued to learn from each other. Despite all the adversities, the man discovered a new strength within him. He was not just a grandfather to Lucas. He had become his mentor, his guide, and most importantly, in a safe harbor amidst an ocean of uncertainty. Together grandfather and grandson embarked on a journey of healing and solidarity, strengthening a bond of unbreakable love. Although the road they traveled was marked by pain, it was also filled with hope and the promise of a bright future. This new chapter in their lives, although born of tragedy, it became a story of resilience and redemption. Arturo, now grandfather, and Lucas, sole guardian, plunged headlong into the responsibility of raising his grandson. With each new dawn he faced the task with unwavering determination. Although his heart still bore the weight of scars, both visible on his face and invisible on his soul, his appearance, scarred by life's adversities, often made him question his ability to make Lucas the support Lucas needed. But his commitment to ensuring his grandson's well-being never wavered. Lucas, remember, education is the key to the future, Arturo used to say, indicating to his grandson a love of learning. Arturo spent time teaching Lucas, patiently explaining complex concepts and stories rich in lessons despite his own physical and emotional limitations. Lucas in turn faced particular challenges in his social environment. Given the absence of his parents and his grandfather's markedly marked appearance, the boy often found himself at the center of comments and prying eyes at school, which made him feel isolated and different. Confused and hurt, he would ask his grandfather, "Why do people have to be so cruel?" Arturo, hearing this question, felt a sharp pain in his heart, remembering his own experiences with cruelty and rejection. He would respond with a mixture of tenderness and wisdom, "People sometimes fear what is different, Lucas, but remember, what is important is not how others see us, but who you are on the inside." Through these conversations, Arturo tried to strengthen Lucas' spirit by teaching him that a person's true value lies in their character and actions, not in the superficial perception of others. He urged Lucas to value his own self-worth above the opinion of others, equipping him with the emotional tools necessary to face a world that does not always understand or accept diversity. Day after day, Arturo and Lucas were able to share their experiences with each other. Lucas navigated the often turbulent waters of life together, anchored by unconditional love and a silent promise to always care for each other. It was a journey of mutual growth in which each challenge they faced made them stronger and more united. During Lucas' adolescence, there was a remarkable transformation in his relationship with his grandfather. Arturo, those critical and convulsive years were characterized by an intense search for identity and acceptance, which led Lucas down a path full of conflict. Influenced by the pressures of his schoolmates and his own desire to fit in socially, over time Lucas began to perceive differently the scars on Arturo's face, which he once saw as symbols of courage and social integration. Lucas eventually began to perceive differently the scars on Arturo's face. What he had previously seen as symbols of courage and self-improvement, he began to interpret as marks of shame, altering his perception of the man who had been his role model. Marginalized in his own home one particularly tense afternoon, the atmosphere in the home they shared was charged with a dense and heavy energy, a cocktail of pent-up frustration and boiling emotions. The imminence of an inevitable confrontation between the two was palpable in the air. In that charged climate, Lucas, already upset about problems at school, found the trigger for his discomfort in an apparently trivial comment from Arturo about his academic performance. "Lucas, we need to talk about those grades. They don't reflect your true potential," expressed Arturo, his voice tinged with genuine "You're always criticizing me. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." Lucas replied, raising his voice, a clear indication of his pent-up frustration. What began as a concerned conversation on Arturo's part quickly turned into a heated argument. Every word uttered only exacerbated already tense emotions, pushing the two into a deepening disagreement, evidencing the emotional chasm that had formed between them. "You think it's easy being a teenager these days with a grandfather that everyone looks up to and..." Arturo, hard hit by his grandson's words, felt as if a dagger had pierced his heart. "Lucas, I never meant to make a burden for you," he replied in a trembling voice, the scars on his face suddenly more prominent under the light of the convo. The silence that followed was laden with unspoken words and unspoken feelings. Lucas, seeing the tears in his grandfather's eyes, felt a surge of grief. Without another word he left the house with a wave of regret. The silence that followed was laden with unspoken words and unspoken feelings. Lucas, seeing the tears in his grandfather's eyes, felt a surge of grief. Without another word he left the house with the harsh words still echoing in his mind. Hours later, flooded with guilt and remorse, Lucas returned, determined to find his grandfather's eyes still in tears. Lucas returned determined to apologize and make amends for his mistake. He found Arturo sitting silently with a deep expression of TR on his face. "Grandfather, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say those things," started Lucas, with his voice cracking with emotion. Arturo looked at Lucas with a sad smile on his lips. "Lucas, his words abruptly interrupted, as he clutched his chest with a sharp expression of pain. Crossing himself with panic in the voice, ran to the phone, calling for help as he tried to comfort Arturo, who was now struggling to breathe. Within minutes the house was overrun with the sound of sirens and the hustle and bustle of the paramedics transporting Arturo to the hospital. Lucas stood beside the stretcher holding his grandfather's hand, with his mind a whirlwind of fear and worry. "Please stay with me, grandfather," whispered Lucas with tears in his eyes as he watched Arturo being loaded into the ambulance. At that critical moment the harsh words and conflicts seemed trivial at the prospect of losing his grandfather, his safe harbor, in an increasingly confused and defiant world. As the ambulance sped through the streets, Lucas gripped tightly, gripping Arturo's hand, muttering promises and apologies. "He didn't mean those things, grandfather. You are everything to me," he said, each word infused with sincerity and fear. Arturo, fighting the pain that consumed him, tried to offer a reassuring smile to Lucas even in the midst of his own agony. "Lucas, darling," tried to speak, but his words were lost in the noise of the siren and the urgency of the moment. Upon arrival at the hospital, Arturo was rushed to the emergency room, leaving the boy alone in the hallway with his hands still shaking from the adrenal and the fear. Sitting there, Lucas reflected on the harsh words he had spoken, each one of which now weighed heavy on his heart. As he thought of the journey they had traveled together, the lessons of life and the unconditional love the old man had always shown him despite the scars and adversity. And now in that cold and impersonal hallway Lucas realized the depth of his love and gratitude towards his grandfather. The hours passed slowly and each minute seemed like an eternity as the boy waited for news in the hospital. The hallways were filled with an oppressive silence, only interrupted by muffled footsteps and sounds of medical equipment. Lucas sat in an uncomfortable waiting room chair. He was immersed in a sea of guilt and worry. With a sea of guilt and worry, the corridors were filled with an oppressive silence, only interrupted by muffled footsteps and sounds of medical equipment. The corridors were filled with an oppressive silence, only interrupted by muffled footsteps and sounds of medical equipment. Lucas, sitting in an uncomfortable chair in the waiting room, he was immersed in a sea of guilt and worry. His eyes, reddened and swollen from crying, they were fixed on the closed door of the intensive care unit where his grandfather was fighting for his life. Immersed in anguished thoughts, Lucas was pulled out of his introspection by the nurse, who handed him an object found in the pocket of Arturo's gown, an old diary, and worn with trembling hands he opened the diary, whose pages, yellowed by time, revealed his grandfather's firm handwriting. The first entries dated from shortly after the accident that disfigured the man. Lucas began to read, absorbing every word, every raw and sincere emotion recorded in them. "Today, I find it hard to look at myself in the mirror," he wrote Arturo on one of the pages, "but I have to be strong, not only for myself, but also for my family." Lucas continued reading, each diary entry revealing a new facet of Arturo's journey: his pain, his resilience, and above all the unconditional love he had always felt for his family. Laughing at my daughter, watching Lucas grow up, that gives me strength to cope each day, he read on another page as Arturo's words unfolded before his eyes. Lucas felt a surge of emotions he had never felt. He never understood it. He muttered to himself with tears welling up again. The magnitude of the sacrifice and love Arturo felt for him became apparent, making the boy feel small and shallow for having judged his grandfather by his looks. I was so worried about what others would think. I didn't see how hard you have worked for my grandfather. Lucas spoke softly as if Arturo could hear him. You are the bravest and the strongest, and I was blind. Pressing the newspaper to his chest, Lucas felt a mixture of admiration, love, and deep regret. He promised himself that if Arturo recovered, he would do everything he could to show how much he valued and loved his grandfather. Lucas now understood that a person's true strength and beauty lay not in their outward appearance but in what was in their heart. You faced the world when it turned against you, grandfather. Lucas whispered, the pages of the journal trembling in his hands. You taught me what true strength is even when I did not see it. Lucas skimmed more pages, each one a window into Arturo's soul, revealing his path of overcoming and the depth of his. I judged you by the scars, grandfather, but they are only marks of your incredible journey, Lucas continued with his voice cracking with emotion. You are my hero, and I had not been able to see it until now. Standing there in that barren hallway with Arturo's journal in his hands, Lucas felt a transformation inside him. He understood that the true lessons of life did not come from books or words but from experiences and the sacrifices of those who loved us. Lucas spent the night by the intensive care door, clutching the journal, waiting for any news from Arturo. He made a silent promise to honor his grandfather's legacy of strength and love regardless of the outcome of that night. The lessons contained within the weathered pages of Arturo's journal had illuminated a path of understanding and gratitude, forever changing Lucas' perspective. That night in the hospital, Lucas not only discovered the true essence of Arturo but also rediscovered himself. He recognized the incalculable value of the unconditional love and sacrifice that his grandfather had demonstrated throughout his life. After the anguish of that night in the hospital came the news that Arturo had survived the heart attack. As the old man lay frail in the hospital bed, slowly recovering, Lucas sat beside him in reflection and determination. The shock of almost losing his grandfather had been an awakening for Lucas, a revelation of the depth and importance of his relationship with Arturo. The boy gently took his grandfather's hand, observing each slow breath and every little move. Grandfather, I promise to be better, he whispered with words full of solemn promise. I promise to cherish every moment we spent together. When the man finally opened his eyes, meeting Lucas' worried gaze, a weak but genuine smile appeared on his face. Lucas murmured in a weak voice but full of affection, Grandfather, I've read your diary, confessed Lucas with tears in his eyes. I never knew how much you fought, how much you sacrificed. I'm so sorry, I hadn't seen it before. Arturo squeezed Lucas' hand, a simple but meaningful gesture. In the days that followed, as Arturo regained his strength, Lucas became a constant presence at his side. He read to Arturo, they shared everyday stories, and most importantly, he listened to his grandfather's life stories, each one a lesson in resilience and hope. I want to learn from you, grandfather. I want to be as strong as you, said Lucas in one of those moments with a firm voice, full of admiration. You are already strong, Lucas, and I am proud of the man you are becoming, replied Arturo, with his wrinkled hand caressing Lucas' hair affectionately. Those moments in the hospital became a journey of rediscovery and reconciliation. Lucas helped his grandfather in physiotherapy sessions, encouraging him with every step and movement, no matter how difficult it was. They shared meals, sometimes in silence, others talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding bridges that had been tense, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding the bridges that had been strained. You know, grandfather, I have realized something important, Lucas once said as he helped Arturo down the hospital corridor. I have realized that strength doesn't come from appearances, it comes from within, our capacity to love, forgive, and going forward in spite of everything. Arturo leaned on Lucas, smiled proudly. That's very wise, Lucas. You have learned the most important lesson in life. As Arturo's recovery progressed, their relationship blossomed in new ways. Lucas was more attentive, more present, listening to Arturo's past stories with a new look, realizing that every scar, every wrinkle had a story, a life lesson. I'm going to tell everyone about my amazing grandfather when we get home, Lucas said with a gleam of excitement in his eyes. They need to know how amazing you are, Arturo laughed, his laughter still weak but full of warmth. I don't need the world to know, Lucas. Knowing that you understand and appreciate me is more than enough for me. When the day of Arturo's discharge finally arrived, Lucas was by his side, ready to help him in any way he needed. They left the hospital together, not just as grandfather and grandson, But as true friends on a shared journey through life, we are going to do many things together. Grandfather, we have a lot of time to catch up, said Lucas as he guided Arturo out of the hospital. Arturo, leaning on Lucas, looked up at the blue sky and smiled. With you by my side, Lucas, I know the best days are yet to come. And so, with a renewed and strengthened bond, grandfather, and as that day approached, Arturo continued his recovery process, gaining strength and resilience with each passing day. Finally, graduation day arrived, waking up under a clear sky that seemed to foreshadow the promise of new beginnings and celebrations. The school gymnasium was packed with family and friends, all gathered in an atmosphere of pride and anticipation, awaiting the moment when each student would be recognized for their efforts and academic achievements. In that sea of people, Lucas stood out, not only for his impeccable attire that reflected the importance of the event, but also for the company of his grandfather Arturo, who was by his side. Lucas stood out not only for his impeccable attire that reflected the importance of the event, but also for the company of his grandfather Arturo, who was by his side. Lucas stood out not only for his impeccable attire that reflected the importance of the event, but also for the company of his grandfather Arturo, who stood by his side, offering him support and showing his pride. Arturo, with the scars that marked his face as a testament to his difficult journey through life, attracted curious glances and soft whispers from the crowd, who commented on both his appearance and his indomitable spirit. Yet he walked with dignity and pride, leaning both physically and emotionally on the affection and pride of his grandfather Arturo, with the scars that marked his face as a testament to his difficult journey through life, attracted curious glances and soft whispers from the crowd, who commented on both his appearance and his indomitable spirit. Yet he walked with dignity and pride, leaning both physically and emotionally on the affection and pride of the crowd. The admiration he felt for his grandson. And it was time for Lucas' speech. An expectant hush came over the gymnasium. All eyes were on him, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation as the young man prepared to speak. His presence on the podium was the culmination of years of challenges and achievements, and both he and Arturo knew that this moment represented much more than just academic recognition. It was an affirmation of their resilience and mutual growth through years of adversity. Lucas took the stage with a pounding heart but a steady voice. And Clara, today I want to share this special moment with the person who taught me the true meaning of strength and beauty. He began to look fondly at Arturo. Please, grandfather. I want to share this special moment with the person who taught me the true meaning of strength and beauty. He began to gaze lovingly. Arturo, please, grandfather, join me up here. Arturo, surprised and moving slowly, joined Lucas on stage. His walk carried with it the story of a life of challenges and triumphs. Lucas continued with his voice echoing throughout the gym. This man, my grandfather, is living proof of true beauty. The one that really matters is in kindness, compassion, and unconditional love. Lucas looked at Arturo with his eyes shining with emotion. Grandfather, you have shown me that even the greatest adversities can be overcome with courage and love. You are my inspiration, and I will be eternally grateful for all you have done for me. Arturo, with tears in his eyes, looked at the audience and then back at Lucas. My dear grandson, you have given me something worth living, for your strength and your love have rejuvenated me. And then again to Lucas, my dear grandson, you have given me something worth living, for your strength and love have rejuvenated me. The audience, moved by the sincerity and depth of Lucas' words, broke into warm applause. Many were touched and moved by the genuine expression of love and gratitude between grandfather and grandson. Expression of love and gratitude between grandfather and grandson. Today I celebrate not only my academic achievements, Lucas continued, but also the beauty and strength of unconditional love. This man, my grandfather, has taught me that true strength comes from facing our adversities with courage and love. Lucas then turned to Arturo, holding his hand. Grandfather, every scar on your face tells a story of survival, every wrinkle a lesson of life. Arturo, overcoming his emotions, managed to speak in a low but audible voice. Lucas, you are the greatest joy of my life. To see you here, such a strong young man. And Lucas' speech not only honored Arturo but also inspired all in attendance. He spoke of the importance of looking beyond appearances and recognizing the inner beauty, the compassion and goodness that resides in each of us. That this graduation, Lucas concluded, serves as a reminder to us all to value the people in our lives, not only for how they look but for who they are in their hearts. The audience rose in applause, applauding not only Lucas' accomplishment but also the extraordinary bond and life choice shared by him and Arturo. That day Lucas and Arturo celebrated not only a graduation but also the beauty of unconditional love, a strength that overcomes all adversity and reminds us of what is truly true. The bond and life choice shared by him and Arturo. That day Lucas and Arturo celebrated not only a graduation but also the beauty of unconditional love, a strength that overcomes all adversities and reminds us what really matters in life. What did you think of this story? Leave us in the comments your impressions, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. And spread the message of love and appreciation. Remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the little bell so we can let you know when we will upload new exciting stories for you.